Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Perez, and I'm going to be discussing the side effects of bipedality, including hair loss, birth problems, and vulnerability to injuries. So, our objectives are first off to learn how theorists believe bipedality played a significant role in the overall body hair loss in early hominids. Secondly, learn how bipedality has led to birth problems in women and what process occurs in order to successfully give birth. And lastly, understand some of the ways bipedality has left Homo sapiens susceptible to ankle and back injuries. So, how bipedality may have aided to hair loss in early hominids. Ruxton and Wilkinson explained the need for hair loss in early hominids and eventually Homo sapiens was the need for thermal regulation that is produced through sweat cooling the body during long sun exposure. So, if you take a look at this graph over here to the right, um, it starts from morning to nighttime, as well as the total heat load a hominid could withstand. So if you look at these black dots represent bipedal hominids that were hairy. And what you can see is that from morning to nighttime, the heat load was actually pretty consistent. But here during the long hours of the sun exposure, these hominids could not really withstand too much heat exposure, and staying out in the sun too long could actually lead to hyperthermia and death. So often they need to seek shade in order to be sheltered. And if you take a look at these other dots right here, these represent bipedal hairless hominids. And what you can already see is that during the morning time, all the way to the nighttime, uh, these hominids were actually colder. But what's significant is that during the daytimes, you could see that they could withstand a larger heat load. And with the ability to produce sweat would actually cool them down during this longer parts of the day so that they could actually do activities throughout longer sun exposure. And what's necessary for this to occur would also have to be water sources, because as you're sweating, you're actually losing water from within the body. And as you can see, both A and B, A represents female hominin and B represents males. So you could see that it's pretty similar with both male and female. So standing upright is advantageous for thermal regulation because it allows for less body surface exposure to sun during the noon hours, and airflows at higher elevation help to cool sweat produced from heat. And this was suggested by Wheeler in 1984. So this kind of correlates to how bipedality may have led to hair loss, although it is still argued whether early hominids lived in arboreal regions at the time of hair loss. It is suggested that Africa was largely woodland areas, but what Ruxton and Wilkinson explain is that grasslands like the savanna began to emerge in Africa roughly 3 to 2 million years ago. So hair loss may still have been relevant to hominids during this era, who were exposed to longer sun exposure. So next, how bipedalism has led to issues with childbirth. So narrowing of the pelvis is a crucial feature of bipedality because it enables the upright locomotion. However, it is modern humans' narrow pelvis that causes women to have issues with childbirth. Birthing children is a strenuous task that can take up to 9 hours and often requires assistance to successfully deliver a baby. Take a look at this picture right here on the right-hand side. It shows Lucy, who is a hominid from 3.2 million years ago, Homo erectus, roughly 1.4 million years ago, and modern human pelvises. So you can see Lucy's pelvis was actually a lot less narrower, and it was actually flatter. Uh, Homo erectus was a little more narrow, but as you can see through time, the pelvis began to kind of face frontal a little more. And as you can see with human pelvises, it's pretty much completely forward, which allows bipedalism. Complications which come with childbirth occur due to the simple fact that child's head must traverse through the pelvis, which comes in contact with the ischial bones, as well as the coccyx. Therefore, the child's head must be rotated in order to successfully give birth. So take a look at this picture over here on the right-hand side. In this picture, you can see a male pelvis on the right side. On the left side of it is a female pelvis, and right below is a chimpanzee's pelvis. So what you notice about the male pelvis is that it's actually a lot more narrow than the female pelvis, and that is because males do not give birth. But here in the female pelvis, you can actually see that it is the ischial bones right here and the coccyx bones that will cause a problem. So the baby's during childbirth head must rotate in order to first exit here. But what happens is it becomes susceptible because it faces downward, and if pulled out, that could lead to spinal injuries and even death. So you can see that it takes a lot of work to get the baby out in that rotating position. And other problems that occur is a child's head being too large to pass through the birth canal, which often must undergo a cesarean section or called a C-section. In the past, both women and children were susceptible to death if this problem had occurred. So you can see that bipedalism has led to various issues just with childbirth alone. Let's move on to the next slide. How bipedalism has led to vulnerability with ankle and spine injuries. So the evolution of the human foot has resulted in changes of bone structures, including an addition of ligaments compared to other apes, and this has allowed for the ability of bipedality. But with one wrong step, the ankle can actually be strained or broken. So if you take a look at this picture over here on the right, you see a photograph of a human foot and a chimpanzee foot. You can already see that the chimpanzee's foot has a larger opposable digit toe compared to the human's toe, which is aligned with the other digits, as well as the ankle bones, which humans' foot are larger and more rigid than the chimps. So an adaptation for bipedality is observable in the curve of the spine as well. The S curve allows for the ability to walk upright, but it is the cause for lower back pain as well. The spine is constructed of small vertebrae and is lined with discs, which act as cushioning, and as they call it, wear and tear or even aging can lead to a breakdown of these discs, and one wrong turn, lifting something too heavy can cause a slip or herniated disc, which from what I have heard is very painful and can even leave people unable to work or unable to lift heavy objects after that. So that's one of the other problems with bipedalism. Leads to ankle and spinal injuries. Let's move on. So what you've learned is how some theorists believe bipedality plays a significant role in the overall functional body hair loss in early hominids and modern humans, how bipedality has led to birth problems in women, and what processes need to occur in order to successfully give birth. And lastly, understand some of the ways bipedality has left Homo sapiens susceptible to ankle, joint, and back injuries. I'd like to thank you for watching. I include this picture of the evolution of Homer Simpson. I thought it was kind of funny. I've also included my works cited page. If any of you thought this was interesting, if you'd like to learn more about how bipedality may have resulted in hair loss or any of the other topics that were explained in this video, and you'd like to take a deeper look and do a little bit more research for yourself, you could go ahead and check out any of these links and sites. But thank you again for watching. Hope you all have a great day. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.